I am so excited you're back. Today's topic is a really good one. I am going to teach you a superpower. If you learn this skill, your life will be better in every way. So this is a topic from the book that you may recall. It's called The Thought Upgrade. And I borrow the word upgrade from my former coach, Victoria Castle, who wrote an amazing book called The Trance of Scarcity. And I love this word because we can all relate to what it feels like to climb into a plane and walk past first class and scooch into our tiny little seat. And then maybe amazingly, our name gets called and we get upgraded. We're still on the same plane, which is your life. We're going to the same place, but we're much more comfortable and at ease, and it's a better ride. And in the case of thought upgrades, we just feel better and we get better results. So it's like arriving at your destination, but you're better slept. All right, enough of the metaphor. So let's talk about thoughts. We are probably the only species, humans, who can actually think about our thoughts. It's called metacognition. The problem is we don't usually think about our thoughts. We just have our thoughts and we let our thoughts lead us to places that maybe we don't want to go. So specifically, we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts. It's way too many to think about. But on some of them, we get hooked. So to be specific, we have about 5 times as many negative thoughts as we do positive thoughts. And if you're watching television news, especially more provocative news that might be there to hook you and communicate conspiracies. But any news, for example, is going to increase the percentage of negative thoughts you have because they're there to hook you with fear and anger. So this is one of the reasons why over 20 years ago I stopped watching the news. I don't need any more negative thoughts in my life. Now, if you're a person who does compassion meditation every day, you're going to have way more positive thoughts than negative thoughts. But this is our brain's default. So why does our brain do this? Well, you'll remember that our brain just wants to keep us safe. And so our brain has way too high of a trigger warning. Every 1/5 of a second, as you may recall, our brain is looking for a threat. So that's why we have so many negative thoughts. And the big problem with this is that our thoughts, and this is where you get to see my really crazy handwriting, but our thoughts create emotions. And those emotions drive us to take actions or inactions. And those produce results. Our results in our life don't just happen. They happen because of a thought that we had. We don't just wake up one day and find that none of our clothes fit anymore. We don't just wake up one day and find that we're bitter at our spouse. We don't just wake up one day and find out we're divorced. It happens over time because of the thoughts we have. So let's look at some examples of this. Let's upgrade some of our thoughts. For example, let's think about a really common thought that a lot of my clients have, which is, I can't trust somebody until they've earned it. Okay, so let's say you're a manager and you have that thought. I can't trust somebody until they've earned it. So what emotions are you going to have when this new hire comes onto your team? Well, you're going to be doubtful, you're going to be suspicious, you're going to be wary, you're going to be hesitant. So what actions are you going to take? Well, you're probably going to micromanage that person. You're probably not going to give them all the information that they might need because you want to see what they can handle. So what results are you going to get from that person? They're not going to be able to do their job very well because you're micromanaging them and withholding information. We do this in our personal lives too. So let's say you're not willing to trust a new person and enfold them into your friendship unless they earn it. So what are you likely to do with that person? Well, when you talk to them, you're likely to be guarded. not divulge any embarrassing personal information or information that they might share with somebody else that you wish they wouldn't. So what is your result going to be with that person? They're not going to trust you either. They're going to feel like you're hiding something. So that's just a couple of examples that I come across all the time, and I'm sure you can think of many more. So let's talk about how we upgrade these things. I like to think of our thoughts as sometimes they steer us into a ditch. They steer us into a place we don't want to go. So how do we steer ourselves out of the ditch? And that's where I get the acronym, albeit the misspelled acronym, called STEAR. We want to notice our thoughts and upgrade them or steer them to a better place. So we just talked about a couple of situations, but I'm going to give you one that came up recently in one of my client conversations. So I have a client who was mad at her boss. And S in STEAR stands for situation. So the specific situation was her boss did not approve her expense report. Her thought was, my boss is a micromanaging jerk. Control freak, micromanaging jerk, it was all kind of wrapped up in there in her thoughts. What emotions do you think she had as a result of these thoughts? She was angry, she was resentful, she was bitter, really negative thoughts. What actions do you think she would take or would feel like taking with her boss? She might complain. She might just ignore her boss. She might send a scathing email to her boss. She might be passive aggressive to her boss. What kind of results are those going to get her? Is her boss going to magically say, hey, I'm really glad you brought this to my attention. You've done it in such a negative way that now I want to approve your expense report? No, that's not what's going to happen. Her relationship with her boss is going to be diminished. And whether she complains or not, her boss is going to sense her resentment. It's going to ooze out of her in one of her next meetings. So we worked through a new STEAR. Now, when you work through the new STEAR, the situation is always the same. The situation can't change. The situation is still, my boss did not approve my expense report. What is another thought she could have had about that situation that she could have believed and would have produced better emotions and better results? Well, she could have thought to herself, I wonder what his reason is. She could have thought to herself, I wonder what kind of budget pressure he's under from senior management. She could have thought, I wonder if I made a mistake on my expense report that caused him to decline it. Any of those thoughts would have produced more neutral or better emotions like curiosity or empathy. Now, the trick with a thought upgrade, I've already said it, but I just want to highlight it. You can't just be Pollyanna and glass half full. It has to be something that you genuinely believe. So sometimes with my clients, I have to throw out a bunch of things. And then finally, they might land on one that meets the two criteria. They believe it, and they feel better when they think it. Feeling better meaning different emotions that prompt different actions. So if she was feeling empathy and curiosity for her boss, what would she do differently than she did the first time around? Well, she might actually have an empathetic, curious conversation with him and ask open-ended questions without all the dripping resentment coming off of her. And then the result is she's going to learn information. She's going to learn why her expense report got declined. She might learn what pressures her boss is under, and their relationship is going to be better. Because nobody, I don't care if you're a boss or a parent or a child, nobody wants to be on the receiving end of resentment. All right, so that's one example of a STEAR that we just did that on a pretty simple issue, but you can do these for really meaty issues. Now, a lot of my clients have trouble coming up with a new thought, and you will too, because we get stuck in our thoughts. One of the reasons we get stuck in our thoughts is that sometimes they feel good. Sometimes negative thoughts feel good. There's a payoff. There's also a cost. So let's take this one for example, this scenario we just went through. What is the payoff for her in resenting and being angry at her boss? She gets to be right. She doesn't have to do anything different. She gets to be right. And if you've never been in that position of resenting somebody and having a hard time losing that resentment, then you are Mother Teresa, and I bow to you. But I think we've all been there. It is hard to let go of being right. Remember, your brain wants you to feel pleasure, not pain. And as icky as resentment feels, it feels good to be right. Well, what is the obvious cost of resentment? The obvious cost is your relationship. It also will eventually wear you down and produce poor results in your life. So notice that as you're thinking about hanging on to this thought so hard, like road rage. No, I know that guy broke the rule. Really? Is that going to feel good to hold on to that? What's the payoff? You get to be right. But what's the cost? The cost is I show up at work angry, or I swear in front of my child who's in the back seat. Lots of costs. It's important for you to note the cost, because once your brain sees, ooh, there's a cost here I don't like, your brain's going to want to go away from that pain and make it easier for you to come up with a new thought. One of the ways you can get to a new thought is by skipping the T step and going straight to the emotion step and saying, what would I rather feel in this situation? And one you can always come up with is, I would rather feel peace in this situation. I would rather feel at ease in this situation, or a little more ease in this situation. And once you tell your brain, I want to feel ease, then it's easy to go back and say, what thought would I need to feel? Or what thought would I need to think in order to feel ease? All right, so that's another kind of silly example, but we can do this with really big stuff too. And I want to go back to the little equation I wrote very messily here. Thoughts create emotions that produce actions that produce results. And some of you may remember this story from my book, but when I was a college senior, ripe old age of 22, I was in a car accident. It was December 22nd. I was on my way to work, Christmas break, and I was in an accident where I broke my back. So the situation was, I now had a broken vertebrae, ruptured disc, and a lot of soft tissue damage. Now, I didn't know that at the time. At the time, I just knew the situation was, I'm going to be late for work. It was nuts, but that's what my brain went to, was I'm going to be late for work. Didn't understand the gravity of the situation. So that was my thought. And thing to know about thoughts, sometimes we upgrade them to beliefs. Now, this is not the thought upgrade I'm talking about, but this is when we decide to make a thought true. So my belief was, I need to find a doctor immediately, and all doctors are the same. That was my belief at the time. All doctors are the same. So I went to my mom's doctor. Never mind that he had had a news story about him where they nicknamed him the Butcher. I'm not making this up. Never mind that my mom's back had not gotten better seeing him. And never mind that he didn't do a thorough examination of me. He just prescribed physical therapy and drugs. But I believed all doctors know what they're doing, and all doctors are the same. So, and my emotions were impatience, fear, so I just wanted to take quick action. Well, this was not a good doctor, as you can probably predict. And something important to know about your doctors is their beliefs matter. This doctor, once he found out what was going on with me, he believed that my condition was incurable. That was his belief. So how do you think he treated me? Well, he took me out of physical therapy. He put me on more drugs. And what do you think my results were? I got worse. I was in more pain. I was in despair. I was in depression. Lucky for me, my then boyfriend, who had become my husband, lived out here in California. I lived in Arizona at the time. So I moved. I graduated, I moved, and I was in so much pain. I didn't know where to go, so I just checked myself into Stanford Hospital. In the emergency room, a nurse said, I have seen situations like yours, and I know somebody who can fix them. So she sent me to a very different kind of doctor, a sports orthopedic doctor who was a doctor to the 49ers football team. And his beliefs about my condition were, I've seen worse, and we can make you better. So how do you think he treated me? Well, he did a very thorough exam. He took his time. He gave me a lot of steroids because that's what you do when you're a football doctor. So he shot a lot of steroids in my back. He also did a procedure, an outpatient procedure, this would be years later, but an outpatient procedure where they melted the inside of my disc to get rid of scar tissue. So they didn't remove anything, they didn't put any bars in me. This was a very minimally invasive surgery. What do you think my results were? Well, as you can see, I am standing here before you today. I can sit, I can drive, I can work. These are all things that I didn't think I would ever be able to do again. So because of my doctor's beliefs, I got better. Now, the steroids led to a whole nother situation where it triggered rheumatoid arthritis. Now, to his credit, that doctor believed me when I said, I think all the steroids we've pumped into me have created this autoimmune condition. Some doctors would have thought I was crazy, and believe me, some doctors do. He didn't. And he said, I can't fix it, but I know somebody who can. And that would put me on a path to be the person I am today, who believes that whatever happens to me in my health, I can fix it. I just have to find the right person and the right modality, but I can fix it. Now, you may disagree, you may think that's crazy, but I have cured a lot of things that are supposedly incurable because of this belief that gets me to these results. All right, so you can also, as you see, use the STEAR model to upgrade the big thoughts that limit you. And we all have one big thought that limits us. I'm not good enough. Now, your particular I'm not good enough story is going to sound a little bit different depending on you, but we all have it. And I think humans, for the most part, are one of the only species that has this. I can't interview other animals, but you do not see zebras, who, by the way, don't get ulcers, according to the famous book title. You don't see zebras on the tundra comparing their butts and saying, do these stripes make me look big? They don't do that. Humans do that. We are constantly comparing ourselves to others and not measuring up. This is such an important story to upgrade that I highly recommend you work on this one and be patient with yourself. It takes some time. So if we were to steer this one, the situation is anything. Anything that we're procrastinating, maybe we're overweight. And our thought is, well, I'm not good enough, so I'll always be fat. And the emotions we feel from that are despair, despondency, hopelessness. So what do? What action do we take? We just eat more. We don't exercise because that's not going to matter. And then what results do we get? We get fatter. We prove ourselves right. We're constantly proving to ourselves that we really aren't good enough. So this was something that I worked with Victoria on many, many years ago. And the upgrade that I came up with for myself was, the universe delights in me in this and every moment. That one landed for me. I believed it, and it gave me relief. It also kind of cracked me up, because if you think about it, we're doing a lot in our lives that are pretty silly. So whether I was picking my nose or swearing at somebody in the car, which I never do, the universe delighted in me. So I'm going to put some things in your workbook to give you some ideas, but come up with your own that works for you. Have fun with this, and if you need some help, you can remember we are all made of stars. And I think that one's a pretty cool upgrade. And it's true. So I am so excited that you watched this video, and I am so excited to see what upgrades you come up with. And this is one that we need to practice every day, multiple times a day. And with this big kahuna story upgrade that you're going to be working on, the I'm not good enough story, this is one where you have to set a timer, put Post-it notes on the refrigerator, put reminders on your mirror, because remember, 5 times as many negative thoughts over positive thoughts. So our default is negative thinking. So be patient with yourself. You have to build new neural pathways. The new story isn't going to embed itself until you repeat it over and over and over. But the more you use the STEAR model, the easier it will be. And now I catch myself all the time thinking a bad thought and thinking, do I really want to hold on to that? What do I want to believe instead? You will get good at this and it will change your life. I'll see you in the next video.